evening and welcome. Today is Wednesday, March 11th. This is the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. We are currently in session. If we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is getting our agenda in order. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any items that anybody would like pulled from the consent agenda? No. Then can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? All those in favor? One of the things, did you want to talk about the retirements?
Well, I'd like to at least make mention.
Yes,
You know,
well,
it's like,
it's been
I was
approved.
just going to say something, yes.
No.
exactly. 11 teachers are retiring this year, and one teaching assistant, and we're losing some wonderful staff. However, it's well earned on their part. We will be celebrating them at the end of May. So, would you like me to say something about each member?
I don't think so, because that's what the celebration in May will be.
Okay.
So
It's a big hit this year, I'll say that.
Well,
There are a lot of people, but a lot of people have been here for many, many years. So
it's like you say, well earned. It's
Yeah.
you know,
Enjoy.
well earned. Exactly.
Great timing.
And we give yeah.
Sorry. Be spoken
Smarter.
from another teacher. So that brings us to the items removed from the consent agenda, which would be, we have 4 donations. We have from, that'd be 4, please. Barnes & Noble, Frank G. Lindsay for $39.74. We have Frank G. Lindsay also received a donation of $55.45 from Target, probably another certain amount percentage for what they purchased. The Wells Fargo Community Support Campaign made a donation to the high school, $4,000. I'm not sure if there was if that was earmarked for something, but in any case, it is very much appreciated. And the 4th is the Buchanan, the BVPTA and the HHCEF made matching donations of $1,000 each to purchase the We Are Readers reading initiative at the elementary school. I assume 4 BVs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So thank you very much to the PTA and HHCEF for that, as well as to Wells Fargo, Barnes & Noble, and Target. Thank you very much for all, especially the HHCF, the PTA, for their hard work, because I know that money, a lot of work goes into accumulating that. So thank you. Can I get a motion to approve these donations as presented? Me. Second? In favor?
Aye.
That brings us to audience comments. For items not on the agenda. Okay. Superintendent's report.
Okay, a couple of things I want to highlight and celebrate. A couple of things. First, more business-related items for the board that our central office team is looking into. BOCES has again begun the discussion on regional summer school. I know that was something many districts in our region had, and there were some concerns and issues around logistics. That conversation is going to start again in the next couple of weeks, trying to find opportunities for kids to catch up and get ahead, but also in a more cost-effective and localized way. For example, could Hendrick Hudson, Croton, and Lakeland offer a summer school funded through BOCES without having it be regionalized? Can we offer our own programs and receive some of the financial benefit from BOCES? So those are some questions that superintendents are asking of BOCES, because there is an interest, both opportunities for kids to catch up and move them quicker, but there's something to be said for our own kids to have an academic experience with our own teachers. So we're trying to find a happy medium between being cost effective and maintaining important relationships between kids and teachers. So more on that later. We're also investigating, Lynn Rafalik is investigating programs with regards to alternative to suspension. when we go through our discipline process, not only in our district, but all districts in New York State, you eventually get to a place where the superintendent or his or her designee recommends a suspension because of different behaviors or circumstances. The state essentially only provides one alternative: additional suspension or come back to school. Some districts have created programs where you can achieve both. You can achieve some sort of discipline and opportunity for students to reflect on the behavior, provide an academic program, and also a support program. A lot of our students need support outside of the regular classroom, whether it's through therapy or drug and alcohol abuse. But we have some students, and we've had some scenarios, like all schools do, that have really forced us to look in the mirror with regards to what are we doing and how are we responding to kids that show signs of behaviors that we can't support, but what can we do to support them to get them back on their feet in a different way. So Lynn is spearheading that, and hopefully we'll have an update for you on those efforts shortly. This summer we're going to kick off something very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to, is an Elementary Leadership Week. The 3 elementary schools will come together at the end of July, and each principal, and Don is here today, each principal will select a team of teachers in their building that will come together for, it will feel like a retreat and a conference at the same time, where our entire elementary operation can come together, reflect on programs, processes, and data, identify needs and interest areas to study for the future, but most importantly, the 3 schools collectively and individually can create their school plan for the 15-16 school year. So by the end of our time together, the principal leading a team of people within the building will be able to say, here's how Frank G. Lindsay or Furnace Woods or BV is going to address these issues, and here's what we're going to work on in August to get the word out. So when kids and teachers come back together in early September, the plan is made and we can get working on it and use that valuable time at the beginning of the year to start putting plans in action. So it's a work in progress, but we're zeroing in on the participants, we're zeroing in on the deliverables, and this is a district deeply rooted in strategic planning. This is the next step. This is taking our strategic plan that you have worked on for decades and zeroing in at the building level so they can implement it with the participation of others. So we'll certainly keep you updated on that, and would like to invite you to some of the sessions. The last 2 things are updates. One is Seussical took place last weekend, and unfortunately I couldn't make it, but I read probably 25 different emails from students and teachers and parents and even community members that didn't have any kids in the performance, and they were wowed. And I think what is even more heartwarming about the performance is we had some tough weather last week, so these kids performed without as many rehearsals as they thought. Maybe they got on stage not as prepared as they thought they were, but all of the feedback I've heard was outstanding. And it's important that we recognize and celebrate our kids that play an instrument, that build sets, and that sing and dance just as much as we do that we celebrate them in the classroom and in the athletic fields, because that is a very important part of high school and the community culture. Similarly, next week, the Education Foundation is hosting the Harlem Wizards. They were in all of our elementary schools last week.
This Saturday.
This Saturday. I've got my Saturdays mixed up. This Saturday at the high school, it's almost sold out. In fact, they have oversold their courtside seats, so Beth Gruber and the foundation are trying to figure out how to put more seats in the gym, or like any good airline, you bump someone and give them a really good deal to sit somewhere else. But that's going to be a great opportunity.
Have a hot dog.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to watch a couple of the assemblies with the Wizards in a couple of our elementary schools, and it was very, very loud, but a lot of fun. So I know the kids in the community are excited about it. And the last update I have is one in which I'm really going to listen. I'm going to turn the floor over to our student board rep, Jazz, to talk about some of the recent science competitions and some of the successes of our students, and you in particular.
Thank you. So last week we had WESF, which is the Westchester Engineering Fair or something like that, and we had 100% success. Both myself and Jordan Hudock, who are the two seniors in science research this year, competing, both placed second in our respective categories, her in behavior and me in engineering. And having never taken a physics class before in my life, I feel pretty good about second place in engineering. So while that directly doesn't qualify us for next competitions, we've applied individually to the same ones in which that one would have sent us to. So things are great, things are awesome. Tomorrow we're heading up to Albany for Upstate JSHS, and then I don't believe that either of us had the opportunity to move on to nationals for that, but we both had to qualify in order to get to this stage. So things are great. We had JSHS. I'm sorry, I might be wrong because she might not be coming up. Yes, it's science research competition. I might be the only one going up tomorrow. I think it's only Dr. Rogers and I. And so we had placed at JSHS a few weeks ago in order to get to this competition. So that's the plan. And then possibility of Houston, a little later on, and some other crazy stuff. And so science research it's alive and kicking.
Well, and maybe in 2 weeks you could give us a one-pager of all the acronyms that you're a part of. And so
What's really Will you be in the fashion show?
I will be in the fashion show. We're coming back.
Friday
we're coming back.
Night.
I
All day in a
5:30
pretty
from Albany,
face.
and
I tell you.
yeah, so we've been strutting on the catwalk and getting that all done, and so it'll be a good time. So Friday night, come out.
Who said models were stupid?
And
We're getting a lot of Zoolander stuff going on.
Oh, a lot of yeah. No, it's absolutely. Thank you,
One of
guys.
the things that I'm most impressed about it, though, is that we had a hard science and a soft science, observational science, behavioral sciences, both represented, and they're not usually not going along. So in one program, we're getting a wide variety of
Well, the students choose their topic,
Yes,
which is
right.
it's just. And Dr. Rogers, she's wonderful. I'm just so impressed. She's truly brought this program, and she's done. These students you've benefited so much. I know my son, who was there, 45 years ago, benefited greatly by the program. And each year you see each one of these children. It's very much. It's been a huge piece of their college application process and all that. So, no, Dr. Rogers should truly be commended by being able to accomplish that.
It's amazing because most schools or science research programs, there are teachers, and then there's the students, and then there's the internet to look up all your information. And for us, we always note that before the internet, ask Dr. Rogers, because it's likely that she either wrote a paper or knows everything about a topic you're going to use. I mean, she's
awesome.
The most acclaimed scientist.
She's
it's
wonderful,
unbelievable.
yes.
And person. She's amazing. It's her.
I commend her as well for all of the accomplishments with these children, students.
Scientists.
There you go.
Scientist students.
So, Laura, did you want to talk about the fashion show before we go?
No. Everybody can go. It's this Friday night.
This Friday. All right, that brings us to committee reports then. Finance committee met this week, but that will be a topic shortly. So I think we can just push that along. I don't know that there were too many with the weather being the way it is. I think a lot got.
It's fun trying to set up policy.
You didn't go,
I went to the one the week before.
right? Oh, that's right.
I went to the first BV talent show.
Right.
And it was really good. They had a big turnout for the very first student-organized talent show. So 3 or 4 fourth-grade girls thought up the idea, organized it, and put it on. And it was really a fun event. A lot of people were there, and they had the shortest PTA meeting I've ever been to afterwards. It was like 10 minutes. It was great.
Flash forward 5 years, they'll be running the fashion show.
We did. I attended the second PTA meeting at BV, and I also attended the Golden Anchor Award at Frenchie Lindsay, that ceremony, and the PTA meeting. And once again, we talked about some topics that are current tonight. We were discussing the equity of services between the buildings, and most importantly, the math coaches, and aligning Franchi Lindsay's amount of time with the other two elementary schools. So that was probably the biggest thing, and I guess the PTA members had a meeting with Mr. Hochreiter concerning class size, the math coaches, and Horizons. So, yes, and the other two were kind of alleviated as far as the discussion went, and math coaches is still an issue, so.
The other thing from the very short PTA meeting I went to was that they brought up the issue of transportation.
Right, transportation was brought up, but yes, you know, how some people had come up to me even, and I know they had gone up to you, and really emphasized the importance of having children be driven by bus drivers who they've known all along. So that was a very big concern of theirs, is that, you know, we really stay with transportation the way
Well, I
it is
think
now.
they think the important thing is that you assured them that it's as our responsibility to look at everything.
Right,
You know,
and-
that nothing
And
is,
that was it.
that's our responsibility as, you know,
Well, we are
in
taking
community
it back
members.
here, so we are bringing everything back that we heard.
And I just have one more thing, which isn't really a committee report, but I did have the opportunity to go to the Katona Museum of Art and see the art that was displayed by our wonderful high school students. It's quite an impressive exhibit every year. The Katona Museum of Art does an exhibit of all of the area schools, including Connecticut and New Jersey, and they select the student artists, and they have a one-week show, art show, all the high school kids. So some very, very lovely pieces coming out of that program.
Well, some of it next, I think our next PTA meeting will be over at the Art Show High School, correct? So
At the
I'm sure
library.
At the
at the
library.
library,
Yeah.
at the,
And there are different pieces there than we're at Katona, but
there's not overlap?
The installation is already up
Okay.
at the library.
yeah.
All right, so that's something to look forward to, not just the meeting. So, all right, thank you very much. That brings us to our first presentation discussion, which will be our K-12 budget presentation.
Okay, so this is not going to be fun. There's very little here, but I'm happy that. I think that you need to know that. But before I start, I'd like to read something that Claire posted on the internet after Siskel, and it says to me so much about Claire. So she posted a chart that says the top 10 skills children learn from the arts: creativity, confidence, problem solving, perseverance, focus, nonverbal communication, receiving constructive feedback, collaboration, dedication, and accountability. And I would like to thank Claire for all that she brought to our district and all she did for those kids. It was amazing, including the fire drill as it was about to start on Sunday. So I'm sure you saw that picture, but it was remarkable. So we have to tell Dr. Rogers and Claire to watch this.
Yep.
And also Erica Dankler,
And of
who,
course,
you know,
and Ben
helped,
English.
and Ben, yes.
And,
The three of them really did an outstanding job with our children.
Yep, so the arts are certainly alive and well.
Yep.
Which is great. So this is the last time I'll be doing this, and I didn't want to end on this note. I had 2 years that were much easier. This is a hard, hard budget, and there's no low-hanging fruit anymore. You know, there's nothing easy about this. So with that, I'll take you through this one now. Okay, that green is what the part of the budget that's instruction. So we're proud of that because the average in the state is lower than that. It's all about our instruction and our kids. This is our situation. Enrique and I worked hard on this together to try and make this clear. So Enrique, if you want to chime in, feel free. I was an English major, let's remember that. Okay, so we're started out with, if we were to maintain what we had this year, we'd be $1.4 million over the state's cap. That's a lot of money. Okay, we've got 11 teachers retiring. If we didn't have to replace any of them, which of course Of course, we want to, we have to. That would save us $1.16 million, but that's not the case. Each new hire, and this is an average because although we try very hard to hire at MA1, some come in with family health care needs and some come in with individual health care needs. So it's an average that the salary and benefits for each new hire is $88,000. Okay, so what we've determined is through the attrition, and that's a little bit of overstaffing in a couple of areas, and with our declining enrollment. Through attrition alone, we don't have to replace 1.2 FTE, and that's the music teacher who's retiring in the middle school. And we kept him busy, and he did a wonderful job, but it's not essential to the program. And a little bit less of the art teacher. That's assuming that we make our part-time art teacher full-time, and she's more than earned it. She's wonderful in the high school. And then we would need to hire another 0.4 art teacher to meet the needs in art. So I hope this is clear. Okay. There are reductions. We know there are reductions. So these were our considerations or our goals: to make these reductions through attrition if at all possible, to investigate different models if we need to provide support, and to replace retired staff with duly certified teachers if possible. In other words, when we replace, actually in this world, and you'll hear more about it soon, if there's anyone who's duly certified in ESL, that's huge with the new requirements. But, obviously we'll see. So, something else that's new, and it's very new, it's like hot off the press new regulations for English language learners. When you read these regulations, they're wonderful for children. They are so the right thing for children. They're based on somewhat of a paradigm shift that every teacher is a teacher of ELLs, which is true because they're mainstreamed in regular classes all day long. Especially, not so much in our district, we don't have so many English language learners, but in many districts in New York State, for sure, they're in every class all day. And that we don't look at English as a new language. This is a new acronym you're going to see, ENL. English is a new language. That this is not a deficit. This is something to be celebrated. These kids come with a richness of culture. Obviously, we need them to learn conversational English and academic English, but we also need to celebrate who they are, and we need to embrace them. So that's the theory behind the changes in New York State. The actual changes are, it's no longer just a pullout, which makes it hard because there are requirements that ESL teachers push into classes. We have to push in by grade level. So if you've got 6 children in an elementary school and they're in all 6 grades, that's 6 periods that the ESL teacher has to push in. Also, we used to, we have very small numbers in our schools of ESL children. We used to pull out several grade levels at once. In the high school, 4 grade levels together, if they were at the same level. In the middle school, the 3 levels together. And in our elementary school, all kinds of combinations of children, depending on the populations. And the new regulations say that it's restricted to 2 grades at a time. Again, this is great for kids, but it's so hard to schedule. So part of what you see tonight will be us working with this mandate, which we cannot maintain with the current staff that we have.
So what does that mean? I mean, you said we can't maintain it with the current
Well,
staff.
right now
add
we
staff
have,
or change the way that we do it.
we have to change. Of course, we're going to meet the needs of these kids, but we can't have. We could have the children in all 3 elementary schools, but that's minimum 1.5 more teachers.
So we're thinking of consolidating
We're
one
thinking about
one building.
going back to consolidating the way we did years ago.
Mhm.
It's not great. There's nothing great tonight. I don't feel good about any of this, except for I like these new regulations because they're there for children.
And the reason that, from what I understand, the reason we have the new regulations is because ESL students, on the whole, across the state,
They're not making the progress they need to make.
they don't graduate at anywhere near the rate that
Well,
any group of kids does.
Think about, except for in our high school because we have the most remarkable ESL teacher on the planet. in our high school, and all of our schools. But if you think about an advanced student ESL, so you think about 3 or 4 high schoolers who are in that advanced category, and that's pretty much what our numbers are. They're pulled out to work in a small group with a teacher. Compare that with the rich language of the ESL supporting that child in the global studies class. There's no comparison in the quality of the program. You know, four children in a small room working on whatever they're working on, which is fine, but, or, you know, compared to getting the support in that academic subject where they need to pass this Regents and global, like bring up global because it's such a hard Regents for so many kids. So there's lots of good thought behind this new regulation, but it's a challenge to our scheduling and our staffing. Thanks, Charles. Okay, so these were our recommendations of how we'll replace the retirements. These are only recommendations. There's absolutely nothing done about this. These are totally recommendations. So you see the categories of teachers who retired. And our feeling was we could absorb the 2 elementary teachers, and we know we can absorb the music teacher without affecting the program. The elementary teachers is highly controversial and breaks my heart on about 10,000 levels. Because
how are we doing that?
Well, that would be putting 2 of our math specialists back or math coaches back in the classroom. I mean,
and there's no way around that.
Well, I'm never going to say there's no way around it. There's no easy fix anymore. The easy fixes were 5 years ago. It's getting harder and harder and harder. But it's something I want you all to think about and talk about. Or, we want you all.
I think when you look at the list, the phrase behind those titles are sadly mandated and non-mandated. That IEPs, regulations, state ed law, you name it, RTI regulations, seat time regulations dictate that the positions on the left-hand side need to be replaced in order to meet those thresholds from the state. The positions on the right aren't mandated. That doesn't mean we don't believe in them or want to maintain and sustain and even build those programs. The math coaches, math specialist positions were the right fix at the right time. As you remember a year ago with the Common Core and the commissioner going around trying to calm everyone down, we had math nights and we were starting to ease a lot of the anxieties. But if we look at our current budget, if we had to balance it today, and even if we move forward with this model, our budget wouldn't be balanced, but all things being equal, if we looked at mandated program and non, sadly, the math coaches fall right now on the non-mandated column. You'll see in the next slide what are some other areas we can look at in order to make sure we re-employ all of the people in all of the positions that we have. So it's not done. It's not a recommendation we want you to do. It's important we say that formally and publicly, but if we were to adopt the budget tonight, which we don't have to, we've got 4 or 6 weeks, we would have to really seriously look at those positions, and that's not what Alice wants to do or I want to do, or certainly our principals, and we have some of the PTA folks here today. They have made a huge impact in a short period of time.
And there is I've been pushing for these math coaches the whole time I've been here. So I realized the dream this year, and to cut it is painful.
And there's no RTI regulations on giving children.
No.
Then what do these kids do that are in a classroom with limited time from their teachers? How do they end up with?
Well, since the beginning of time, the classroom teacher has worked with kids of all different levels. And it's hard work, and differentiated for the vast range we have is very hard work, but we didn't invent it here. And the fact that we had math coaches this year, they did so much more than work with kids. They brought whole buildings of mathematics.
I know.
along.
Teachers have been very happy.
Teachers are very happy with it. And it's, support for kids, it's support for teachers, it's looking at data, it's supporting teachers who need more support than some others, perhaps. It's been wonderful on many levels, and yet none of it's mandated.
And I just want to go back.
Classroom teachers provide it.
I just want to go back and say that if a priority, which I think it should be, is to reduce staff and balance the budget through attrition, right now, again, if we wanted to maintain 2 math specialists, we would need to look at 2 currently employed people that would be employed next year and reduce their program. So, again, this is looking at our program and our staffing through the lens of who's retiring and from a mandated standpoint, who we need to bring back. There's an opportunity, I hope, as we'll get in the next slide, to talk about where we may be able to tighten the belt in other areas in order to keep these positions alive. And we committed to that process way back in January when we started the budget, that layoffs or staff would be last resort after we turned over the stones and did our due diligence in other areas.
Before we go forward, I have one other question. Alice, you said that earlier that we didn't need to replace 1.2 teachers through attrition due to overstaffing. Did you have declining enrollment?
It's declining enrollment, and music teachers don't have different certifications, but they certainly have different skill sets. So we've got strings teachers, and we've got band teachers, and we've got general music teachers, and we've got people who work in elementary school. And we have had the luxury of band/general music teacher who's been able to provide small group lessons, smaller than you would expect to see in a middle school, but it's been a beautiful luxury. But, we've known all along that when, one of our general music teachers retires, we don't need to replace them. We have plenty of teachers to teach all the classes, and I'm not even going to say cover, because we're doing much more than covering what's mandated. We're really providing more music instruction than the state requires, and it shows in all the great stuff we do here.
But the groups, it's not going to affect the group,
No.
those. It's just, it may.
You might have 4 kids instead of 2 in a music lesson.
Correct. So, that's.
And if you look at the music lessons that Doug Frank has in the elementary school, with 14 kids taking trumpet, and none of them, they don't even know how to blow into those things, he's got the big lessons. It's not as they get older.
No, but
Yeah.
I think this is, that's not painful
No,
compared to
that
some
is,
of the others.
that is, nobody's losing a job. He's happy to be retiring, and
And the children aren't losing anything.
right. And the same with the .2 of an art teacher. That's declining enrollment. That's fewer sections in the elementary schools.
Thank you.
Before we go on, maybe Enrique can talk. Enrique is a conservative forecaster and a prudent forecaster. We don't know exactly what our state aid is going to be, and he's budgeted on the lower of the 2 figures that's out there. So, about what would the range be? And what's the status on that?
Well, probably all of you know that Governor Cuomo
Stinks.
Probably not the thing to say on television.
decided that he was going to make 2 budgets. One that will be exactly the same as last year. Every school will get exactly the same amount of money as last year. Or he will increase it about 3 to 4% if the legislator decides to approve several of his conditions. And some of them are good conditions. For example, he wants to have a speed up of 30/28. So some of them are good, but unfortunately, we just have the one from last year. Based on our state aid from last year, I added $300,000 because we had a situation that our stacks were not filed on time, and we did not get that money last year. So hopefully we'll get it this year, given that we fixed the problem. So I'm being very conservative in the sense that I'm expecting the same amount as last year. However, if nothing changes and Governor Cuomo decides that it's going to be the exact amount, even if, we did not file on time last year, then we're going to be another $300,000 in the red. But I'm assuming that that's not the case. If the legislator agree to everything that Cuomo says, then our state aid will be about 4 to 5% more, and our state aid today is about $5.6 million. So that would be another $250,000 give and take.
But that's an area where some school districts, where I was talking about the districts using them, are advocating and writing letters to the governor and the legislature about, presenting a more realistic state aid runs and getting it out soon enough so that we can actually make good decisions based on what we'll actually get rather than guesses.
So if the state aid increases, then we would be safer with
We'll
these
have
programs?
more latitude, correct. But
Yes.
he is conservatively, and I believe appropriately, choosing I don't want to say worst case scenario, but certainly the most conservative approach, because we need to, if we wind up with more money, then great, we'll find that out and we'll make the adjustments. But right now, we need to assume we're going to get the least amount, because we can't, we can't scale back. We have to start at that and then, prepare for the worst.
So then, as we spoke about, it would behoove us to start writing letters to Governor Cuomo.
Well, actually, that's why I was there last weekend in Binghamton to advocate for that. Everyone is advocating, but
He's not listening.
Well, and I think the frustration is he won a healthy re-election and feels he has a mandate, and it's hard. It's hard to get his or his staff's attention. I know, as Enrique said, he was advocating. Our superintendent's group was in Albany as recently as yesterday and the weekend. Our PTA council has an advocacy arm. There's a legislative breakfast this Saturday in White Plains. So everyone's making the same push. It's a matter of where the votes are right now in Albany. I think the Assembly passed a budget with it's either a $1.2 or $2.1 billion increase to schools. It's a matter of what the Senate does and what the negotiations are between the three men in the room.
So I think the point is there is a glimmer of hope, but I think right now, in dealing with this, we need to take the most conservative approach. We have to use the lowest possible, the lowest and possibly likely number, and then, if we wind up getting a little bit more, then perhaps, we can reconsider some of these. Which, we're hopeful, but right now we need to prepare for it. We need to prepare as though these aren't going to happen, as though it's the least amount.
And I sound like I'm beating a dead horse, which I probably am, but I just know, listening to our teachers and looking at students and talking to the math coaches and to the principals, what a huge difference it has made in our schools to have these programs, which help our students tremendously, help our teachers tremendously, and in turn, help our schools to be better schools. I'm sure if we look at data, we will say that the children, have performed much better overall. Having these people within our schools.
Should be interesting to see, yes.
Yeah, and, it just,
The change takes
certain
time.
things I just feel
Correct.
passionate about,
So
and
you
this
don't
I
s-
feel
you-
very passionate about.
You don't necessarily see a great big jump in the first year, as
No,
much
but
as
I
you
think,
want.
but
What we are going to notice without math specialists is that besides Common Core and the nonsense it's presenting in math, is that when kids get to high school, they still don't know how to add fractions.
Well, let's hope that they will, because they're doing fractions like crazy.
No,
No,
sorry.
now we are. Come to our elementary classrooms. Fractions.
I just gave my test to that.
Fractions. It's no longer the last chapter in the text as it used to be.
Well, I think everybody
No,
feels pretty,
seriously, Lori.
I think
Come
it's
see.
fair to say that everybody is feeling, you know, very strongly that if at all possible, the math coaches
Yeah,
are,
and what's interesting is,
you know, should be salvaged. But
we
I
have
think
a
right now we
consultant
need
who's
to-
been working with us for 2 years from Southern Westchester BOCES, and she's so impressed with the work that our teachers are doing in math. So that's, you know, way beyond the math teachers, it's all the teachers. But it's pretty great.
Good.
Okay, so
Before we-
anyway, this,
Alice, before we go on, Joe brought up one other point that's worth knowing. When you said the 3 men in the room, there's one new man
Yeah,
in the
there's a new
room,
face.
and so
oh,
he needs to be reached out to too in the advocacy because he's brand new on the scene and he's there. And Speaker Steer Hesty, how do you say his name?
so there
He's
should be a
Steer
way,
Hesty.
there should be a way to get this information.
But I
out.
saw him speak. I saw a story in the paper where he was talking about raising the state aid runs because basically he was saying you can't starve education. So we need to focus on him too as part of the advocacy. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
Super. So this next page is a little wacky, but this is the result of a lot of brainstorming. It's brainstorming first with Joe Enrique and me, and then with all the administrators, and then with the finance. And it's a list, it's just a menu of possibilities
It's
to
possibilities.
totally possibilities. Chip 20,000, 50,000 here to see if we can add up to the Enrique's 450 we'll fit in, or 600 something if the math is off the table. So
I look at this, and I have one glaring concern, and it's been brought to our attention from the HHEA, as well as parents in the community, as well as teachers. We have to increase our sub pay. We are not getting quality subs in this district. People are not coming to this
that's
district.
not on this list.
You know, it's right there, the high school. But
No, no,
we're
no.
not, we're
Yeah,
not
you
talking
can
about
look there from the
that.
bottom, it says reduce
Yeah.
sub-budget. I
Yeah.
think
That's
It's-
different.
Well,
It's
there's lots of
different.
things we should do. I mean,
But
Yeah.
we got to start really looking at
so
that.
I'm gonna. all right.
I really have to
That's a
agree. We were
different,
just
but
having a
that's a different
discussion.
conversation, I think,
But-
than.
But that's part of the budget here. That's K through 12, and we have to really.
It is,
think
but
about
we're working in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Evidently, we have to, Enrique and I've had this conversation many times, we have to increase our sub-pay significantly.
Yes.
We're now at $72. Our competition is at about 100.
We
So
pay
if
our-
we're to go to 80, it won't work. If
We
we're to
pay
go
our
to
chap-
90, it won't work.
Our
We
chaperones.
pay our chaperones more than we pay our subs.
And that's
And
that's
it's
you
a
know.
disgrace.
We might as well hire an HML kid to come babysit for $8 an hour. It's crazy. I totally agree.
I mean, your
I
chaperones
couldn't
work
agree
3 hours,
with
they
you more,
get more
and
than
I'm
a
not
sub that's
responsible
removed.
for the cut in that sub-pay.
Actually, on that line, can you kind of describe what was envisioned with that to reduce the sub budget for professional
Oh,
development?
okay, so we'll
That's-
skip down to the only one on this list that I like. That's good.
So
That's why I
what does
started
that
with
mean?
Claire's
What are you
quote.
talking about?
I love this too.
Yeah, it's the only thing that I like.
People are not.
We
could do
we spend
wonderful
a lot of money on substitutes for teachers for professional development, for workshops, because we don't have very much dedicated PD time in our calendar year. Many districts have, do various creative things to have more time that's devoted to professional development, that teachers aren't pulled out of classes and we're not paying subs for that time. So with the finance committee this week, we when Mary Pat asked, well, what else could we do to have more professional development time that would cost less money, not having the subs. And we started talking about having a half a day or a 2-hour release, but we were talking a half a day once a month for dedicated professional development. We would have to be very disciplined, because if you find yourself pulling teachers for full days for workshops, it's counterproductive.
Mhm.
It's one or the other. But if you commit to these half a day per month and you know when it's coming, and you put all of your workshops and conferences and consultants and every other thing
And
that we
allow
pull
parents
teachers
the
for.
ability to plan accordingly.
Right.
Right. I know that when my children were in school in Irvington, this was just part of our life. And we knew it was on Wednesdays, and it was just happening.
Predictable,
Right,
reliable.
right.
But you're pushing the financial responsibility now onto the parents.
Well,
We do it in our district.
for those who need to
I'm
get
not saying
babysitters,
it's not
for sure.
something that we're eventually
You mean
going to do.
you're saying
but-
the childcare?
Yes, because a lot of people have two parents working, then they have to find childcare. They either have to pay for childcare, take a half a day off of work, or a full day off of work if they commute into the city. It doesn't
Or
make
work
sense to
something
go in
out,
and back.
or work something out with friends or older siblings.
Correct,
I-
but if it's every
No, it does,
month,
it absolutely, but
it
by
does
doing
push-
so, it lessens the use of subs in
It does.
terms of, and allows for the professional development. It lessens the use of subs on those particular days. Hello. I know, you must have just come on.
Hello, Mary Pat.
Woke me up. But it makes a huge, it is something that,
It's going to
It's
lower
not
our
terribly-
budget, but it's going to raise Hanklin's budgets.
That
if
was
that's
our-
how they choose to address it. Again, with older siblings, there's other ways, you know, I mean, that's that's where you put the bite on your friends.
How is our absentee rate amongst our teachers requiring
Well,
subs?
Not great, but that's a different conversation. We're talking forced absences. We're pulling teachers
No, I
out
know,
of
but I
classes
just
for
want to
workshops.
know because
But the
that's-
absentee rate, we have some teachers who think that the
bring
4
that to the
personal
table and
days
see
that are
what's
in the
going on.
contract
Why
are
we
theirs
have
to
so many
take.
absentees?
And the
But
truth of the
this
matter
is
is
true, this
personal
might
days are
be a
there if you
better
need
thing.
them. You're not supposed to take all your personal days unless you need them.
Not available.
I had a teacher say to me when she ran out of sick days for maternity leave, I should have used DayQuil more. Well, yes, you should have used DayQuil more. Yeah, someone said that to me out loud in words several years ago. Our attendance rate is not great, for sure. And,
Louise, at $72, last year we spent about $380,000. So
How much?
in $380,000.
so
On
if you
subs.
went up to $100, that's 25% more. Think about that.
But aren't the
But again,
permanent subs included in that?
Yeah.
And they're at a different rate.
yes.
But
But
I'm
again,
just
this is,
saying how much we
Right,
spent
that
last
isn't
year
what
in
we're
salt.
talking
I'm sorry, if we can just sort of bring this back, because, and again, the
Okay,
conversation
so if we look
is-
at this lovely list of horrible things, you know, to a very tight look at our special ed numbers and where perhaps we could collapse some staff, looking at or shifting the responsibility for all field trips and all cultural arts from the district to the PTAs. It's a possibility. Cut the instructional technology coaching program by $15,000 to $20,000. You've got a big budget, but that doesn't mean it's not necessary. We can take a very close look at middle school art and middle school music. We're way over the mandates, the state mandates, which is wonderful, but maybe we can't afford it anymore. I think that if we really look at that, we could be messing with the flip. And you want to get people upset, you mess with the middle school flip, because you're going to teach 7th graders math 9th period every day when you're used to flipping between 1st and 9th. Not going to make people happy. But that's, you know, when you start sharing staff with the middle school and looking at math and at music and art carefully would start that. You're also looking at the flip.
I'm sorry, but by the same time, again, this is all possibilities.
Yes,
and I
these
know
are
you,
just
that
all
you're
the
all going,
ideas.
that we're going to be running these numbers, but having said that, if you know, you talk about the flip, even if that was a choice to only do it in 6th and 7th grade, thereby freeing up, like, if you only flipped in 6th and 7th,
You know, Mary Pat, it's an
because the
interesting concept.
the lunch stays the same, you know, no matter what for the.
Yeah, but I don't know how that would work for the.
I don't know, but I
the
mean,
special
it might
area
be
teachers.
worth considering, and again, just from the perspective of in preparation for the high
Of course,
school
it's
for
worth
these
considering,
children.
but I don't know.
So,
I don't know how that would work with art music, you
I-
know, because they're
so
in flip
why don't we
too.
look at that then? Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you'll love this one, cutting elementary library altogether. It's not mandated.
No.
An easy one to rebid tech support, although we did that already. I don't know how much lower that's going to come in. Cut subs altogether in the high school. Jim's been advocating that for a long time. Because, you know, if there's, we now have a wireless environment. We've got kids working everywhere, you know, looking at jazz. You think about, you know, some of the subs that you have, they're not prepared to teach your advanced classes because no sub is taken everything in the world. But, you know, long-term subs is a whole different story. And by long-term, we have to have a very definite idea. If you're out for 1 day, fine. If you're out for 3, that's a whole different story. So we, you know, we have to look really carefully if we did that. There have been proposed changes in transportation, some draconian, some small. And, putting a few more kids on the bus might be an answer to save some money. We talked about the PD. I have asked Jim to look at the low enrollment classes at the high school. Can you run some of these courses every other year? That kind of thing. And they are running some courses every other year. Yeah, I mean, there's very little that's low enrolled. And the low will be hurting our highest achieving kids because the low enrollment classes are and it's computer science, but it's also the high level language classes, Spanish, French, and Spanish 5, and also the highest level math classes get smaller because students, who started accelerating take other routes because there's so much enrichment in our high school that not everyone follows the same path. So those are the classes that get small. So you're hurting one group of kids if you really take a close look at the low enrollment classes. And the last and my favorite is not replacement. So you would save money if you didn't replace
I
it.
could tell you were having a tough
Sorry,
day.
that's laugh out loud.
Okay, we saw that. We're like, what? It's like it was the end of the day.
Well, it was recommended, and there are those who think when push comes to shove, and you're taking program or teachers away from kids, that you'd be better off taking an administrator away. So there's a way of looking at it. And yes, it's attrition because I am retiring. I will be on the beach somewhere. I just said that.
And now that you rubbed it in, let's go to the next slide.
And just 1 sec. For low enrollment classes, is that also considering, as opposed to, as well as like those senior electives, the alternatives to certain credits?
I think
you rotate. You just offer different ones. It just wouldn't be, instead of offering 6 different ones, you probably offer 3 different ones.
But if you think about it, the senior
And
English
like
electives
every
are
other
your
year.
English class. So that's not really in lieu of anything. That's your English 12 class.
Right, but then aren't the standard English classes much smaller then, because most are taking the alternative?
Could look at that.
Because if you pushed them in.
Yeah. Thanks, Jess. Okay, so now we'll look at enrollment. This is only projections, March, remember that. So things change. And by the time I type this, it's usually wrong because somebody has signed up or left. This is looking at moving ESL to one building. And our feeling is the best for children would be to move them to BV because most of those kids live in that, not most, but a lot of the kids live in the BV area. And even the Frangie kids, which has the second largest population, that's close to BV. And I'm not really talking about busing here. I'm talking about parents being able to get to school functions. Furnace Woods is really far for a lot of families. And some of our ESL families don't have cars yet. So it becomes a real hardship. So these numbers are not exactly what you would expect based on the numbers this year. This is moving ESL kids around. And the ones with stars are close to splits. We watched this all summer. When I was an elementary principal, I used to keep the numbers of my class size in my pocket with me at all times and, have fights with parents who were thinking about parochial school for me to come. This is...
That is 5th grade next year, 63, Frankie. That's 10 students are leaving to go to BV because there's 73 now. So we're in 10
in 4th grade?
Yeah. There's 10
well, if
now.
it's wrong, we look at it. This is not carved in stone, and this is not to pick a fight. I mean, this is
no. But are they going to? Are there 10 students in that level going to BV?
No.
Okay.
It's possible it's wrong.
Okay.
All right. It's and I appreciate it when people point it out because I can't tell you how many mistakes I make with these numbers. But it's all within the range of the number of sections. And if it's wrong, we fix it. That's This is very early. We watched this all summer, and we have split in August if people move in. But this is not how the questions go because they can't hear you on television. You ask from these chairs. Okay. Well, maybe they could hear you, Sabrina.
I don't know.
Okay. So anyway, that's elementary, and every year we look at this, and every year it changes. The numbers projected going into the middle school, they have 2 big classes. When I say big, over 200, and this year and only be 1 next year, so the numbers go down. And that 6th grade class for next year of 190, that's the biggest class you're going to see in 6th grade for a long, long time. Then they're down to about 140, 150, and you're really talking about sections and teams when that happens. Middle school enrollment, this is the last year that you're going to be at about 600 kids.
Actually, what's that going to be? Because they're going to be average about 140, 150 from there.
Yeah, you're
so
looking
it's
at,
not next year.
it's the year after, and you're definitely looking at teaching staff at that point, because those classes get really small. We can't afford that. You know, in really flush times, you keep 2 teams. And so if you have 15 in the class, that's just a luxury. But we're not in really flush times.
So we'd have 1 team?
6th grade can be different. 6th grade is really elementary. There are lots of different configurations for 6th grade. One that is a really good one is a team with 3 teachers on it. And 1 teacher teach. It's a really good team because the kids are not as fragmented. So they have a double period of literacy with their homeroom teacher. And then they have 1 teacher specializes in math, 1 in social studies, and 1 in science. And that's a nice model for a middle school. But we're not there yet. For 7th and 8th grade, you could be looking down the road at, well, the junior high model, you know, that stabs me in the heart, but, you know, that would be your choice. But you could be looking at 3 teams, and 1 team could be a mixed 7-8 team. Not that the kids are mixed, but
Well, I
the
think we're
teachers
getting
would-
ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Well, but I mean, Alice brings good points that when you tighten the belt in a lot of different areas, and if state aid isn't restored, I mean, we're operating under state aid and gap elimination adjustment dating back to 2008, and we're going to have to look at how we organize ourselves in some of the historical pieces of the district, the flip, how we organize kids, 6
the
through
days of the
8.
flip are numbered. You know that.
It's just it's a model of organizing kids' time and staff, and once you start looking at those things, it disrupts tradition, but there may be dollars there, and this isn't a discussion for now, next week, or for next year, but
Well, it is for
if
next
the
year.
finances
Small sixth
but
grade.
if the finances aren't restored from the state, this is the group going back to the governor. The governor has put those sort of decisions right here.
Okay, so our middle school is, our high school is
I think
maintaining.
about it all the time because how do you not?
We're going to get to a point, I think, where we are going to have
I
to
think we're
think
pretty darn
about
close.
Going over the
over
cap?
the cap. Because, our
You
rate
can't
of
run your home
increase
at
is
2%.
so
How do you
little.
expect to run a school at 2%?
Year after year,
Year after year.
Yeah, it's
And it's catching up.
I mean,
I mean, we need repairs made in our buildings. We need
we haven't bought furniture in
staffing,
forever.
You know.
Well-managed schools have a furniture cycle.
I know.
We haven't had money to buy furniture in forever.
40 years.
Yeah, and that's going to start catching up.
What, Enrique, 1% increase in tax levy generates
$410,000.
And
I'm
that
glad.
would still be under the 2%, but according to the calculations that we have with the pilots, ours tax levy is like 0.96. So
No, this year is going to be 0.001.
Yes?
Yes. No, that's it, right?
Yeah.
So
No,
no
that's
change, no
our-
change.
that's
this
our-
year.
But what I'm saying is
Right.
the actual levy is instead of 2%, it's 0.96, correct?
So the English teacher here will explain what they're talking
No.
about with
The actual levy
with the pilots we have.
that
It
we
messes up the
expect to
levy.
increase from last year is like $4,000.
No, I'm talking about, instead of the 2% cap, what's our cap? Because we're not at the 2% cap because of the
That's what I'm
pilot.
saying.
He's saying
It's
0.
zero.
Okay.
The
Point zero
tax
zero
levy
one.
cap, but we have, the rate of increase in the pilot is higher, and the average of it together,
It's not worth the paper.
the average of the pilots plus the tax levy cap is what we are.
Last year our increase was $12,000. This year our increase was like $6,000 in a $40 million tax.
The point I was making, so hypothetically, if we were to try to go over the cap, we'd still be under the state mandated cap that's publicized out there.
Well, the actual,
It
That's
wouldn't
using
be our
language
cap, but it would
correctly.
be,
That's
but
how
we would fall under
You still need a
the
majority.
exceeding
Right,
the
well, that's
cap.
what I'm
We
saying.
need a supermajority.
We've
and-
seen that
60%.
that's gonna be tough.
but that's the other thing. It was trumpeted as a 2% tax levy cap, but it's actually
It's
based
not
on
what
the rate
it
of
is.
inflation. And the rate of inflation over the last few years has been less than 2, so it starts out, the base is less than 2, right?
Last year was 1.46, and this year I think is 1.56.
And in some districts, their cap is well over 3%. And other districts in the state have had a hard time saying this percentage, 3.4. I've seen some even in the low 4s that this is not exceeding the 2% tax cap. It's exceeding 2%, but it's within the tax cap. So
Using the formula that
using
they
the
use.
formula that we submitted March 1st.
60% approval.
Yeah.
If you go over.
Yeah.
So the reality is for us that there's the consideration to go over the tax cap, but whether that's advisable at this point,
You have a lot to think about the next month.
that's a lot to think
So
about.
before I
Because
complete,
this is when we need our room full.
yeah, so thank you for being here, but you're not exactly full. I see a lot of emphases. But anyway, high school enrollment is staying stable next year. When I got here 8 years ago, we were at about 950. So we're definitely, that's going down. And we've looked very carefully, all of us, at our special ed. So this is what we're projecting. Now at this point in any budget season for special ed, it always is projected because we're just starting the annual review process. So lots of things could change, but we're looking at, there's a big group in second grade at BV, so that's 2 sections. There's a big group in next year's 4th grade at Frank G. Lindsay, so that's 2 sections of the co-teach class. And we're not sure about the group coming into kindergarten yet because they're still in the screening process, but if it's possible it'll be 2 classes. So I have it down there, even though we may not need it. And you can see where we are in resource room. The resource room caseload expected by the state is 20 students, and we're well under that. So we're looking to share a resource room teacher between the 2 smaller schools with 7 students at BV, 6 students at Furnace Woods, but maintaining the full 1.0 resource room at Frank G because it's such a bigger school, and they're at 11 now anyway. So that's where we are. And this is as hard as it gets. I think the years that we cut more people were not as hard as this year because there's nothing left to cut. And that's my opinion.
There's nothing left now, and we're cutting stuff that we need.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
We're
when you
cutting
talk
stuff
about,
we need.
and this is my piddly, or the next person's, or maybe not, you can go with that suggestion, professional development. But this is not staffing, it's just the money we spend on summer writing, etc. This is exactly flat, rolled over from last year.
Question, going back one slide. Dr. Monahan was here. He used to talk about being on the bad list. With moving ESL students into one building with a couple of
That's why we're on the list.
especially
Oh, we're not at 30.
No.
We only have about 42 ESL students in the whole district.
so that won't put us at risk
Right.
because we're
Because
housing all the kids
we
in
have
the
to be
building.
at 30 students in the 3 testing grades, and we're far from that.
So
But
this-
that's a really good question, because that's, you don't want to be there if you don't have to. So that's jolly, and I'm happy to share with you all. And I'm sure you all have what to say, and you have many questions. So,
Yeah.
there's the thing.
I'd say thank you, but
Please don't say thank you. There are things
exactly.
I'm proud of.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the efforts.
And thank you for your hard work as well.
Clearly, I think it's fair to say that there's nothing good here. Well, I guess if you want to take the Pollyanna approach, the product is good. We are graduating wonderful kids. We're graduating kids that are prepared to go forward. Unfortunately, we're taking away a lot of things that give them a better experience. And that's, I think, the thing that bothers us most, because we're all here to give these kids the best that we can and to prepare them best. They will still go forward. It's going to look different. And I think right now the question is what our choices are, and not tonight necessarily, but we can discuss our various options here for what's less horrible than another. Or any suggestions that somebody would have as an alternative to these.
So this is very general at this
It
point.
is
We
very
don't
general.
know how much we would save on these things. There are lots of look-ats, but there are no numbers.
Correct. That's the conversation we were just having. That
Yeah, I think the next set of conversations are with the finance committee, and then bringing these scenarios back to the board. So, if you think of it as a menu, we can identify what are some areas that hurt kids and program less, that we may be able to tighten the belt in order to preserve all of the people who are retiring and hire all of them back.
We also have to take into consideration too what we've talked about before, is we want to be a district of destination. We have people, real estate, builders, and there's Valerio's going up. We can't take away what's going to attract people to the district. So we have to really consider that when we're looking at it. So, obviously, what we said, this is preliminary, but we're going to have to think long and hard, possibly going over the tax cap. I'm just spitballing right here.
nope, that's fine.
But we have to also think resale value of the properties. People have houses in this district, and bringing people good, getting more kids into the district. We're not going to do that if we're bare bones. So.
Correct. But that's a conversation I think that we need to have too, if that's sustainable. I mean, if we go over this
Of
year,
course.
We can.
if we go, I'm just saying if.
No, this year we already sent it to the state saying that we're not. We cannot change it.
Okay.
That's moving forward.
But I think
This
every
year
time,
we can use fund balance.
Is there any left?
yes.
There's very little, but there is.
Can we paint the
Knowing
room?
that next year we'll do it, but this year we cannot do it.
When will we have a better idea of what the state aid's going to be, so we can have more
He's so
definitive?
cute. Isn't that a cute? That's a cute question. I think.
He's not bad.
No,
Tell me
I'm
about
just,
it.
you know what?
Well,
We don't know.
Being held
Last
hostage.
week
You are
I
right, Carol.
met with 30 of my counterparts with Questar. He is playing it very close to the chest. He's
He's a
not
bully.
willing to do anything, to say anything. So we don't know.
By this presentation, we may create a little hysteria, which really
But that's a
shouldn't.
hysteria that he's creating in the whole state.
The people get, people concerned about things, and I mean, listen, I ran into a few parents over the weekend and concerned about this, and it's being talked around the whole community. So, I'm someone that likes to see definitive number. I know we have to do this as part of the budget, but I think we're scaring until we get the numbers, and then we can actually come back like we did a few years ago when we had a bunch of the teachers on Frank G that were on the chopping blocks. And we had, and their lives were uprooted, and they were, they were concerned, and everything. Then all of a sudden, it was like a breath of fresh air again. But I don't know. The whole process is to me, it would be better if we come out when we have an idea of what it's going to
So
be.
you want to see, like,
speculating.
you want to see dollar values assigned.
Just your instead of speculation, because now people are going to hear this and they're going to go back and say, I may not have a job and this and that, and the uncertainty that's going to go back into the buildings. That's going to get translated down to to the end user, the kids and stuff like that, and then it's going to have people saying, "Do I sell my house?" Besides the Algonquin pipeline now, the school district, so people may these are thoughts that are going to go through people's minds, and it may not have to be that way. So that's all I'm saying. And I know we have to do this. This is part of the process, but it's very frustrating sitting here listening to Alice's presentation, and these may not even be definitive numbers. These suggestions, the other ideas, a lot of them are ridiculous that we can't get rid of. We fought to get the librarian back. Now we're going to lose it again. Not to have high school subs with the kids. I don't know. I'm just very frustrated with the presentation tonight. Not from your perspective, Alice, but where we are.
But we don't know what those numbers are.
Well, that's the frustrating
And if we don't know
part.
what those numbers are, by
That's
the
the
time we
frustrating
have to
part for
approve the
me.
budget,
As a
that's
board
10
member, as
times
a
No, we'll
taxpayer,
certainly-
as a parent in this district, it
We
doesn't.
can't wait until a week before the budget's supposed to be passed either, and if that's when they decide to put their runs out.
The problem that I see is if we wait And let's say that Governor Cuomo decides not to do anything until April 10th.
Oh, I understand your position. I'm just
Hey,
saying
did
the
you
frustration,
see-
it's not towards you. It's
No,
not
no,
towards
no, I
Alice, it's just
understand.
towards this whole
The
process.
problem that I see is that we need to do it now so people know where we are. These can all go away.
Yeah.
Could. I doubt it. I don't think that we're going to get more than 5% more of state aid. That's $250,000. We need $450 plus the $300 that I'm expecting. So, is this completely going away? I don't think so. So at least, even if it happens that it's 5%, okay, we already discussed what the first 250 will be, rather than discussing it today that we need to set the
No, I
budget.
understand. I'm just frustrated with the process.
We are extremely frustrated as superintendents, business officials, assistant superintendents, because teachers, everyone. But that's the way our state works, or they want it to work.
When Cuomo started 4 years ago, he had his first 3 years were on-time budgets. He committed in his first 3 years multi-year budgets with guaranteed increases, and he won a lot of support, gets reelected, and now is holding a gun to the head of school boards in the Assembly and the Senate. What has happened is that a routine task, adopting the state budget, which the biggest expenditure is public education, that routine task has now been put on us to hand out pink slips with our fingers crossed that we can take them back. And it is extremely frustrating that these are people's jobs and livelihoods and careers, and it's this table who will make that decision in the absence of any decisions from Albany. But I agree with Enrique. It's an exercise we have to go through because we just can't rely on Albany to get it done on time. If they surprise us, great, and we can always reopen the budget and bring people back and restore programs, but we have to put a budget together.
Preparing for this.
Yeah, we have to put a budget together where our expenditures meet our revenues, and
right now, that's worst case at this point.
However, there's stuff that everybody can do. What's the PTA doing? Can I ask?
They have to.
If you could ask Rebecca to step.
Come on up, babe.
Should we come together, or maybe we can help each other out?
And this is a chance for you to make your on TV too. That's why actually I'm telling you, so parents know where to get the forms and residents know where. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. For those of you who don't know, I'm Rebecca Quigley, co-president of the Frank G. Lindsay PTA. And I'm Lisa Anderson, co-president of the Furnace Woods School PTA. Yeah, and I actually was going to speak, but I guess we can take your questions first.
No, I think what Lori's looking is for you to give us an idea of
What kind of advocacy we're doing.
Okay. Janine Eichenholz has formed a parent advocacy council. And we had a meeting on February 25th here, and she's got a website now, actually a Facebook page, and she's also got a button, I believe, on the district page. At least that's what my understanding was, that was going to be happening soon. And on that page, there will be places where parents can have access to form letters that they can send to the politicians.
Are they there now?
I don't believe they're there yet. But they will be soon.
Just checking.
On Facebook, she does have links on
We get that
Facebook
on our
to do.
website right away.
yeah, the advocacy council's on our website.
Okay.
For more
Let me
information,
click
is that
through
an
it.
email?
Yeah, it's just an email address.
Is there anything along the side that would say documents?
Yeah, let me keep looking through it.
Is this Matthew? Is Matthew in charge of getting it in
Matthew's
here?
helping her do
But we're
this.
redoing the whole website, and that will be
No,
taking
this is
place.
just,
No, but
they're
this
just
is
talking
now.
about the
This is
PTA
not-
piece.
yeah, this is not
But,
now.
you know, all of that may
But anyway, so you're creating she's going to be putting documents on that would have templates for us to send to our legislators.
Yes.
Homo,
Um,
Galef, even,
Yes, all the
and it
politicians.
also has to have your home address on it,
Yes.
right? They
Well,
will-
sure, you can fill that
Yeah,
form
no,
out.
what
So-
happens is there's I believe there are links to things that the superintendent's, what do they call that thing? They have a really great way of doing advocacy with the superintendent's group.
The
And-
Lower Hudson Superintendent's Council.
I think that's what it is. And they just walk you through it. You put in your name, your address, your phone number, and it sends it to the right public officials.
Well, if perhaps something like that link or that these
Mhm.
documents can be put on the website.
That's her intent. That's
That'd
absolutely
be
her
terrific.
intent.
And does she have an ETA for that, or do you have any idea of when?
I'm not sure.
ASAP.
ASAP. I mean, she went to the legislative conference this past weekend and came back with lots of really great ideas. They went and they met with some of the government officials as well. And she's getting involved with the Westchester and Putnam County PTA legislative things as well. So she's getting very involved with the PTA, with the legislative council as well.
Terrific.
So
I think
yeah.
Laura's point is just the sooner those documents and that information can be uploaded or at least available, that would be terrific.
Their offices really need to be bombarded because Cuomo is also calling all of his, all the Democrat assembly people to his office and saying, guess what? Not only are you not going to get school funds, you're not going to get funds for your district unless you do what I say. So you really have to flood their offices.
One other thing that the board may wish to consider is Janine's come up with some different resolutions that the PTA is recommending that boards pass or consider passing a resolution to submit to the government officials. And so she was going to be talking and approaching you about that, but just to put that on your radar, that we can be more vocal as a Board of Education as well. Get those resolutions passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to let everyone know that this is very effective. School business officials, superintendents, and board sent a lot of letters about facilities management. And last week I was there, and the head of facilities management told us that because of the pressure and the advocacy, he got 3 openings to hire him, because it was taking about 8 months to get any project approved. Now, for the first time in years, he got 3 openings. So it works.
I know.
So
I'm saying
it
it.
works.
And then maybe he'll plow the lawn for us for when we come up to protest. I don't know.
I just want to see if anybody else has any thoughts or regarding the budget, or if I'm willing to open up to the floor.
Appreciate your hard work on it. It's been tough.
Ms. Pereira.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Good evening, everyone. How are
Good
you?
evening.
I have a few questions, a few clarifications. I know in the past when we've looked at the budgets, when we've seen the numbers, it's sometimes easier to follow where our spending is increasing, why we have such a shortfall this year. So is there any big difference besides lack of state aid that we're having such a shortfall and such a deficit? Because it's hard to really grasp without the numbers in front of us.
Well, just general, I mean, no specifics.
Very general. This year, the TRS, the contribution from the school district, went down substantially. We were saving $700,000 compared to last year. Unfortunately, our special ed program increased by $900,000.
That's in every district.
So there you have a $200,000 difference. Our ERS increases, even though it's decreasing in the whole state, we finance it because of our difficult situation, so for us it increases 1%.
Okay.
And then we have contractual obligations.
That don't stay 2%.
So
Right.
basically, for example, another huge increase this year is that every 5 years we need to do a long-term facility planning. We need to hire someone, and that costs about $100,000 that we have to do at once, and obviously it's hitting us next year, so that's extra $100,000. You can call me and I can give you more information, but that's where the numbers are.
Okay, no, because I know in the past we've had a breakdown like that, and it's when you're talking about numbers and saving through attrition and positions, and we had some loose numbers on the front page, it's easier to follow the flow. And I know you don't have definite numbers yet, nothing solidified.
It's on the previous presentations. I think it was 2 ago.
I mean, I don't
There's some information.
have
No,
that
I mean, I'm just saying, it's on the website. That information is has been uploaded as well. So, just as an additional resource for you.
Okay, thank you. Because I will
You
look.
can call me and
Okay.
I can go through it with you.
Good, thank you. I appreciate that. I guess that also goes back to you again, Enrique, about the number. You're saying that before we cut the 2 math specialist positions or the 2 classroom teachers, what is the number that we're looking that we need to hit, that we are short, our deficit? You said it was, first we heard it was around 450?
It's 450, but that's taking into account that the 2 specialists will go to the classroom.
With them going in?
Yeah.
Okay, so now here's my one question about there, because this is the part that's a little unclear. Looking at the numbers of the classrooms and the breakdown of next year's in sections, we are, sorry, I'm flipping. We are virtually going to stay the same. So Furnace Woods is going up, Frank G is going down 1, and BV is going to stay the same, with the projection of the ESL students going to BV, correct? So does that mean that we are cutting the positions, but are we cutting any teachers? So no one is being left out?
So far, no. If the board accepts the fact that those 2 teachers will go to the classroom, then we're cutting no position.
Then we're cutting nobody at this time, so that's good.
At this
Well,
time.
we have 1 teacher coming back from, we think coming back from leave.
An elementary school teacher
Elementary
coming,
school
so
teacher,
then we
some
might have that.
maternity leave. This is
bump.
something we watch every year.
Right, no, absolutely, but you know, listen, I've gotten my pink slip earlier than this, so sometimes we start to have ideas about this.
And Sabrina, just
yes.
real quick, the January 14th finance presentation, and I can email it to you, goes through some of the questions you asked around the initial budget projection, the cost drivers. It's laid out what's up, what's down. So it's January 14th. I'll send it to you.
Great, I appreciate that. And then I guess the final piece is, I understand what you're saying, the new regulations about the ESL programs and the new requirements from the state. And it makes sense, and it is better education, because if you are pushing into a classroom, you are talking about academic language, you are in the moment, the child's not losing the rigor of the classroom, but is having help catch up on the language, and that's really the whole point of ESL. However, taking a step back, I don't even know, 3 years ago, because my daughter is now 2.5, I was on that committee that our town had put together, or our school district had put together, about what do we do about BV because we are a school in need of improvement. This was one of the issues that was on the table. And we pulled the children from Furnace Woods, and we said everybody deserves to go back to their home school. We can't do it for our ICT children. We are not a big enough district. We do not have enough money, which makes sense, and that is why we float around our ICTs as the entrances. And we all understood that, but because we do have such a small population, we thought we could let everyone stay in their school. And I understand at the same time, budget-wise, why you need to consolidate them. It also makes sense. However, I do want to say, we have finally stepped away from having a stigma on BV. We have finally stepped away from that, where you say that name of that school and there's a negative connotation immediately addressed with it. I agree with what Carson is saying. And what I have talked to Joe about in the past, you need to make this a district where people want to come back and live here and they want to purchase their homes. And I know we've cut so many wonderful programs, and I know we're at bare bones. I was one of the programs that was cut in the past. The Horizon program was cut. The enrichment program, we were the only district in most of Westchester that offered enrichment to every single elementary school student from 1 through 5. It was wonderful. It is what defined us and made us different. And it is the reason why that gentleman over there is sitting there with all those wonderful awards, because his teacher had the time to work with him on independent research from 2nd grade to 5th grade. We have taken that away because of budgets. We've all fallen on hard times, myself included. Many of you who know me personally know my struggles and the sacrifices my family has had to make. However, I want us to think about it carefully. Let us not, because of our restrictions and the conveniences and the money saving, make the choice to put our ESL children in another building yet again and cause a problem that we already fixed for our BV. If you do need to consolidate them, if you need to bring them, is there a different building you can do it to? I don't need it to sound negative in that way.
No, you
but
didn't. Absolutely.
Is there a better fit, a better place, so we can take that stigma and not go back to it for BV? They've worked hard. They deserve to keep on moving forward. They don't need to have any other struggles. And I don't mean to sound negative or poor about this, but yes, our children for ESL are under the 30 number cap, so the reporting will not affect us. But what if that changes? We're going to rip them out of the school again? Let's plan ahead. Let's be ahead of that problem. Because what if it does change? We know in the past it's the most transient population we have. I lost a job at BV because there was a job. 2 weeks later, I went away to Jersey. I came back, there was no job. Because 20 kids moved out of the building. That is our transient population. What if they move in? What if you are next year, by the time you get to September, you're at 31? And now you put that pressure back on that building again.
Because you know that's going to happen too.
Well, and that's what ends up happening. You know what I need to say is that I understand the need to consolidate. It makes sense. So let's get ahead of it. Where else could we maybe put that population where it won't be as intrusive? So, food for thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I just have a couple of things I wanted to ask about. Enrique, if you could clarify, you said earlier that the district committed to the cap for this year. When did that happen? I just was curious.
By law,
Okay.
we need to send the cap amount that we're going to the levy amount that we're going to levy March 1st.
March 1st.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Earlier in discussion, I was led to believe that it happened sometime earlier this winter, but it was March 1st?
March 1st.
Okay.
I sent that a little bit before because the whole factory that this year we were not going to be over the cap.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying. I also just want to say, earlier we were talking about the music teacher position as being eliminated, and I want to clarify that Mr. Stamboni is actually teaching at Frank G. Lindsay this year. He runs 3 of the 4 classes. He teaches recorder. And so there's 4 sections in the 3rd grade at Frank G. this year, and he runs the recorder classes for 3 of those classes. So I just want to clarify that Joe is at Frank G. Lindsay, so it's not just simply a middle school position that we're losing. We all know he is absolutely irreplaceable.
We were filling his schedule.
So anyway, but I just want to clarify that he is not just at the middle school, he is at the elementary school. And mainly, to echo Barbara, at the risk of beating a dead horse, I'm here tonight to speak about the math specialist position that was reinstated at all 3 of the elementary schools this year. And I wanted to share with you that on December 16th of last year, the Frank G. Lindsay PTA Executive Board, along with several of our concerned parents, wrote a letter to Superintendent Hochreiter, Dr. Gottlieb, and Lynn Rafalik. And this letter is also now in possession of several of the board members, and I'm happy to share with anybody who hasn't already seen it. We had a follow-up meeting with Superintendent Hochreiter and Lynn on January 16th. We're grateful for their time that day, and we had a really productive discussion. But there are still some questions that remain. I had invited Superintendent Hochreiter back to one of our PTA meetings to speak about the math specialist position to the Frank G. Lindsay parents to follow up, and we're still working on finalizing a date. But of course, then I saw tonight's agenda, and everything was made public. So amongst several other issues, in our letter we outlined our concerns regarding the math specialist position. Due to the larger number of classes at Frank G. Lindsay, the students there are only seeing Mrs. Boleyn Masterson only once a week. And it's come to our attention that the math specialists at Furnace Woods and BV are being used differently. And we respect Donna Teresi's equitable decision to make Mrs. Masterson, who's a beloved teacher, available to every student in our building. This lack of time with her is especially painful for our large 4th grade, which will be our 5th grade next year, where the enrollments are 24 and 25 students per class. Mrs. Masterson is doing a fabulous job, and I've witnessed her coaching abilities firsthand at some of our district math nights, which I can't speak highly enough of. I just want to say that Frank G. Lindsay needs more help than just she could provide. It's kind of a interesting catch-22 that we found ourselves in. She's doing such an amazing job that we want more. In our letter, we proposed that the math specialists that are currently at Furnace Woods and at BV would also be made available to Frank G. on some sort of an hourly or part-time position so that the larger student population could receive an even more distribution of math services. So as we've seen tonight, there's a suggestion that due to budget constraints, the 3 math specialist positions will be condensed into 1 next year. We understand that there is a massive budget gap that the board is trying to close up. But if Frank G. Lindsay already needs more support than 1 person can provide, how on earth are the 3 elementaries going to make do with 1 math specialist between them next year? The statistics that are available to us indicate that when the math specialists were previously available in the buildings, and this was several years ago, predated me, 61, so after the math specialists had been in the building that year, the following year, 61% of the students did not require AIS math services after that first year. And then the second year, the number rose to 63%. So we have data showing that these people are doing amazing work and that the kids absolutely benefit from it. Of course, it's too early to predict that what's happening right now. We'll be able to get you that data next fall, which of course might be too late at that point. But we expect similar results to happen, after this year. I respectfully ask that the board reject the proposal to eliminate 2 of the math specialists. The positions need to be maintained as they have been this year. We've heard all the arguments. It's an impossible decision, but I just had to come up here and speak from the heart today. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Question.
Okay.
It kind of relates to Ms. Pereira's discussion about ESL students. The biggest issue is that we have 1 or 2.
We have 3 ESL teachers. The scheduling will most likely keep our high school teacher at the high school full-time. There's a little bit of wiggle room with our middle school ESL teacher because the numbers are low and the 3-year grade span is not as hard as the 4-year grade span. Maybe it can work out between different levels and grade spans. But we have the biggest number of BV. We've got the next, believe 9, looking at 12 at Frank G. Lindsay. We get 3 kindergartners, but kindergarten is completely a projection. It's made up at this point. And we've got 4 students at Furnace Woods who are ESL students.
And describe the time that's lost from traveling if teachers have to travel during the day.
ESL students need to meet their students every single day, so you can't do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday, which is an efficient way to share staff. So when teachers travel during the day, they lose 1 teaching period, and it's a half an hour for travel, and that's in the contract. Even if you're traveling from Frank G. to the high school, it's contractually half an hour to travel. But they also, if they teach 7 blocks, they can only teach 6 if they travel.
And some of the hires, if we hired dual certified ESL, could that pick up some of the slack?
If we, this is really long-term because these people don't exist at this time, but there's a huge push for teachers to get this second certification. Our BOCES is offering a program with Manhattanville, but it's pretty stringent. You know, it's not just 6 credits and you're certified. There are a lot of things you need to have to get the CSL certification, but it's certainly for anybody looking for credits beyond the master's, this is the smartest thing to do at this point.
There is a huge void of certified teachers in the rest of the state.
I can only imagine upstate.
Anywhere west of Middletown,
How do you find
northwest
these? They
of
don't exist.
Middletown, yeah, they're having a really, really hard time.
You know, the fact that we have 3 high-quality ESL teachers is great, but this is not, it's a good area to go into if you're looking for work.
And where's ESL supervision?
I supervise, and going forward, it will come under PPS.
It'll move into the PPS?
Into PPS, under Lynn, going forward. But, yeah, I took them over a few years ago, and it's good. You know, it's good.
And then they work in conjunction with principals in the building. So the principal and the PPS will be
of course, the way special
supervising.
ed, yeah, of course. But everyone has one lead evaluator under the New York State evaluation law.
Totally spitballing. I don't know a ton about ESL in the program. Other than that, I have a few, ESL kids in my class are very nice people. So love hanging out with them. It's good times. But is there any possibility to utilize the high school and more advanced, I guess, ESL in terms of grasping English language as they've been in the program for longer? So I guess the juniors and seniors, or whoever, in some of the responsibilities of the younger.
You have to be a certified teacher.
You have to be a certified teacher.
Yeah. You
Okay.
know, of course,
You
Jess,
can't-
it's a brilliant suggestion, and the more we can have kids helping kids, that will only move them along.
I mean, teaching
But
is
for
the best way of
course,
fortifying
and
your
it's your
learning.
best learning, isn't
Right,
it? When
exactly.
you teach them.
I can provide one hour, but I'm not
You're
certified.
not certified. one period out of certification. Right.
Okay.
One of the requirements, actually, to get the certification in ESL is 12 credits of college level language other than English. And if you weren't a liberal arts major, you probably don't have that.
So if science
You have
doesn't
it.
science doesn't work out for you, Jess.
None
I'm
of
thinking it's
them.
going to work out. I'm just thinking it's going to work out. You know, it's not an easy answer. Part of the thinking of BV as the location is the largest population of ESL kids already lives in that area. And these families have been going to PTA meetings and, every kind of event, and they weren't when it was way out in Fergus Woods, because not that they weren't welcome and loved, but it's just so far.
It was very interesting at the last PTA meeting. There was a presentation done by some second grade students, and there were parents there who were, watching their children do this whole little presentation, and there was actually a translator there. And I thought, wow, how wonderful this is,
Well, and that's
to
something
have
else you
this
can do with a
person
larger
there.
population.
Yeah.
If you've got 2 kids speaking one language and 2 kids speaking another language in a school, you can't afford a translator. I mean,
No.
that's just silly.
Well, it was very nice that the district provided that
Yeah, but
service.
we provided the BB because, the numbers of one language.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Any other questions? I think it's important to note that this is still in process. Nothing is written in stone.
Nothing's finalized.
Correct. And again, what we're looking at is taking an extremely conservative approach. It's the safest way to approach it, because you can't go back. You have to essentially assume the worst when you're preparing for, the budget cannot change afterwards, so we have to plan for the least amount, the worst case scenario, and work from there. And if we wind up getting more money, if things shake out a little bit better than we hoped, then we can go from there. But right now, this is very preliminary, and it's what we're looking at. Not very preliminary, but it's preliminary, and it's what we're looking at right now. As we've said 100 times, please, A, if you have any other thoughts, please share them, and B, have people come to these meetings, because I want to hear their voices. It's, if something is completely intolerable or if they have a better idea, then please come share it. If there's something that they think is more important than another, please let us know, because that's important for us to know. Our preference would not be to make these decisions in a vacuum. So, if that's it, we can move on to the next topic. There's another It's the veterans exemption, I believe.
We added this to the agenda. I know the board in public session has discussed this many times, dating back to last year, and I even think before that when the legislation was passed. But what we wanted to do was bring all of those conversations from past board meetings, our finance committee. We wanted to bring them to closure at the board meeting. So we have a very deliberate, on-the-record conversation with regards to the legislation and the position of the board.
Okay. This is actually a very there's no documentation for it, is there? I do believe so. This is a topic that seems to be getting a lot of attention, understandably and fairly. It is something that has been presented to us, again, thank you, Governor Cuomo. And this is something that, as an option for each individual board, each individual district to consider, to look at, and to make your own decisions. To be looking at the numbers that Enrique provided us the other day, he indicated that I think it's pretty much split. Half have gone and supported it, and the other half have either tabled it or said no. And again,
maybe you should explain what I don't think everybody understands.
I'm sorry. The veterans exemption, perhaps you can fill in whatever gaps. It is essentially providing a reduction in taxes to veterans, to individuals who fit a specific qualification. There's specifics. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but generally speaking, it is our veterans, people who've served, families who have served. Whether it's and it's scaled based on the extent of your service. If you've lost somebody, if you've put in X amount of time, and the exemption, the individual, the family, veteran's family, or the veteran gets a reduction in their taxes, and that amount is offset by an increase in the other taxpayers within the district, non-veterans. So if my family gets a tax deduction because we have a veteran and Barbara does not, Barbara she will pay more to cover the reduction that I received. I believe Enrique indicated that we have 400,000.
Close to 375,000.
The amount of money is at stake that would have to be reallocated from one group, the veterans, to the non-veterans. And we've had multiple discussions about this, and I'll be honest with you, my concern, I think I have the utmost respect for our veterans, but my concern is the number of is putting this burden on so many of our seniors that we have. We have an extraordinary amount of seniors, and every time we have a budget vote, we have seniors who come out and explain to us how that they cannot handle that increase, and that concerns me greatly, to ask somebody else to pick up that. I don't know exactly how much it would cost per household, because there's, to gauge that. But again, my hesitancy is to ask somebody else who is in potentially equal or worse financial condition and ask them to pick up that difference. And that's my personal, that's my, that's probably my greatest concern. That and I do, again, I have a certain concern for, to honor our veterans and to make sure that they are recognized for what they do. I just don't know that this is necessarily the best way to do it. And once again, this is my reason to have issues with Governor Cuomo, among others.
But perhaps other people would like to weigh in?
Just as more background information, the veterans already received exemptions on their county taxes, their city taxes, their town taxes, their village tax, and they get a STAR rebate as well, all of which are reimbursed by the state. And this particular decrease would not be reimbursed. It would be directly borne by the rest of the taxpayers in the area. And I agree with Mary Pat. The number of seniors we've had coming out that say, I can't afford another $10 a year on my taxes. You know, when it comes to budget time, I just don't, there may be veterans that are much better off than a lot of our seniors, and to put that burden on them.
And it's not necessarily $10 either.
No, exactly.
In some cases it can be. Yes.
Some of our seniors are so close to the bone that even that tiny amount.
But it's not even just the seniors. You know, we're talking about young people that are moving into this area, and you know, they're scraping together all their money for their first home, you know, and now you're going to ask them to absorb a higher rate of taxes, which really isn't fair, you know, to anybody. And you don't want to see people so overburdened. People are feeling they're overburdened right now, you know. It's just, it would be a difficulty, I think.
Person, Charles?
Yeah, when I got started thinking about my Uncle J.D.
Oh, God. I'm sorry.
He was a veteran. He was on the USS Intrepid during World War II. And the reason he was on the Intrepid was he was a lineman for the telephone company in Smith County, Texas. And they were installing lines over the Army base there. And he said, you know, I was watching those boys crawl through the mud, and they were shooting guns over them, and they were having to eat out in the fields. He said, I didn't like that. He said, then he heard from somebody on the draft board that he was going to be drafted in a month or two, you know, soon. He said, they needed him to find his birth certificate because he was born on the farm, and the only record of it was in the Bible. So he needed to get a birth certificate so they could draft him. So he went and joined the Navy. Because he said he knew he'd get 3 meals a day and a clean place to sleep. So this was a guy. And then he was offered the chance to go on a submarine. He said no, that was too small. So then he wanted to go on a ship, so they put him on the Intrepid.
That was a divine intervention right there.
I was going to say.
That's J.D. Charles, thank you.
Well, he passed away about this time last year, and I didn't get to go to his funeral, so he eulogized. You have to remember people. Anyway, this was a man who, while he was in the Pacific, my grandmother, according to family tales, my grandmother woke up screaming in the middle of the night one night when he was in a kamikaze attack. You know, they found out 2 or 3 days later that the Intrepid had been hit by kamikazes. So he was a gunner's mate on a 5-inch gun on the deck. So when he was about 75 or 78, he came down and visited. We went to a reunion they have on the Intrepid. He walked me around the ship and told me little stories about that. And like I say, this is a man who had seen a lot of action. And the 2 stories that he got the biggest enjoyment about telling me about was looking where the gun mount used to be, and it wasn't there anymore. And he said, you know, he said, about all I ever did was chip and wire brush the rust off of this deck and off of that gun. And he said, you paint it. He said, you'd scrape it, and then you'd paint it gray. And you turn around and it'd be rusted again, and you have to start right back on it. So after all of the things that he did, that was what he remembered, you know, that constant work. And then we were walking through one of the stairways in the ship, and they had a lot of pictures of units. And he looked at one and he said, I believe that was my unit. And he picked out this fellow on the thing. He said, that boy was from Sweetwater, Texas, and he had a guitar. And he said, when he'd see us get down, he'd get his guitar out and play. And he said, it would make us feel so much better that he would play a song for us and pick our spirits up. So you know what? These were 18 and 20-year-old guys out in the middle of the Pacific fighting war and came back to make the greatest country in the world. On this issue, I agree with Mary Pat. I feel strongly. I also feel it's an unfair attack on local control. We talked earlier about Governor Cuomo's attack or the way he's approaching education and the funding and doing things. Well, that's an attack on local control. He and the legislature said that with the tax levy cap, you can't increase the taxes by more than X amount. That you're not capable of negotiating with your units. You're not capable of making good deals. And, you know, you have to live by this artificial constraint that we put out there. And yet, on the other hand, he puts this out and says you can raise the taxes on everybody else while benefiting a small group by shifting the tax burden. So I feel it's like an attack on our local control of what we can do. You know, it's okay. In other cases, the state has set out a group of people, say, in particular the elderly, and they get a star rebate. And this district gets what, $6.5 million from star rebates that we give. The state has recognized that group of people, and from the general revenue fund gets that back to the district, to the people in the district in exchange for those property taxes. It lowers the property taxes for people. If the state was fair about this, if the legislature was fair about this, they would reimburse us for the exemption. So in essence, they set up a situation and said, if you give it, we look like heroes because we gave you the choice. If you don't give it, you look like bumpuses because you're denying something for a deserving group of people. So I just feel it's an unfair predicament that we've been put in, and we have a lot of people in our district. We have a large contingent of elderly people, probably higher than several other districts because of the several nursing homes. So I think it's unfair, and I can't vote for it. You know.
Carson? No JD stories?
No JD stories. A little too young for.
Do you have any thoughts about? No. Laura?
Nora.
You don't have a thought either way about the.
It's a very hard situation because I
Absolutely.
agree with Charles that Cuomo has again put us in a very unfair predicament against the people who have made our country free, who we owe an unbelievable amount to, and people tend to forget that. But at the same time, like Carol said, my husband is a veteran, so we get all of these exemptions, etc. And I know that although some other people might be more selfish or not, that we would never put that burden on other people. That's like so many of our other social programs that happen to begin with. So I would be inclined to not go along with this. And it makes us sound horrible. But
And in terms of process, we would only need an affirmative vote if we were to adopt the exemption. If we choose not to, we've had the discussion, we don't need a resolution or an affirmative vote.
So
I don't think that any of us would have, you know, a negative feeling about this at all, except for, you know, what burden it's placing on everybody else, you know. So I think that has to be something that's considered. I think everybody has said the same thing.
And that has been the position of the School Boards Association from the beginning, that the exemption is a good idea and is a great way to honor those who have served, but the balance should be coming from the state or federal dollars, not
make
your
our
neighbor.
money anyway.
So their position is echoed by the comments heard tonight. So you're in line with the legislative
thank you.
piece.
It is.
All right, then that would That brings us to audience comments.
Good evening, my name is Paul Barry. I'm a combat veteran of the Persian Gulf War. I spoke with Charlie about this probably about 3 months ago. And two things. The savings that the veterans are getting is minuscule. The other problem I have is, how many veterans are in this community? Has anybody polled?
Well,
Yes.
Enrique's.
Well,
No, how many veterans, not people who have served, how many veterans? There's a distinction between a veteran and somebody who has served in the military.
we don't know the number, because that comes from the town. What we know, what the town was able to give us is, given the number of households, because there might be 3 in a household or 1, given the number of households, what the shift in tax would be. That's the only thing they are able to tell us based on the veterans' tax exemption on tax. They also would not be able to tell you how many veterans or how many combats or anything else. That's how I know. I personally, I don't have information of how many veterans we have. That's all.
Okay, that's part of my argument is you don't know how, but it would affect the payroll here if you don't know how many veterans there are. How can you vote on something you don't even know the facts on? You're saying you don't know the total number. One of the other arguments that you're saying you don't burden the senior citizens. Well, half the senior citizens are combat veterans of Vietnam nowadays and the Korean War, and just a handful of veterans left over from World War II. So when you're saying that it's going to affect the senior citizens, actually might benefit most of them. I know most of the person who would advise me of this is my brother-in-law, who was a combat veteran of Vietnam. And there's many Vietnam veterans in this community. I don't have all the facts because I was just made aware of that we're going to vote on this or even speak about it. I would have gotten more information, which I will return with at a later date.
Please do. The amount of money that he did indicate was, it was $375,000, which is roughly equivalent of, it's roughly equivalent of 1% of our budget. So in theory,
No, tax levy.
Tax levy. So given that, I don't know what the burden would be to other people. I mean, you could make the assumption that it would be, you know, the shift would be 1% for everybody in their taxes. You know,
on average, it's $44.
Okay.
That's coming from Governor Cuomo's own state.
For Westchester or for, because he may be giving you $44 that, I mean, because taxes are entirely different, you know,
Well,
if you're taking, I'm just saying, I don't know exactly
that's
the dollar,
my point is,
but to a
let's find
certain
out a little more information before
to a
we
certain
vote on
extent,
it.
there's the argument whether whether even $44. I mean, it's, you know, that's a significant amount of money. I mean, yes, you can do the math, and it's, you know, but $4 a month. But I mean, I just the thought of asking somebody else to do that it's a lot. And again, when we have our vote, you know, we have the senior citizens come out and vote and say, I can't afford that. That's where we're just very concerned about shifting it from one party to the other.
I understand that. I'm just saying you don't have all the facts. Is what I'm saying.
I'd like to.
You're saying senior citizens. I just mentioned that most of the senior citizens now are Vietnam veterans, Korean veterans, and a handful of World War II veterans that are still left. And to bring out Carson's point earlier is, you're not going to attract as many young veterans coming, looking. I know 3 of my nephews all served, and they're looking to buy houses. They're not going to go to a town that's not offering these things. Croton has just passed it. Pleasantville has passed it. Many Westchester counties. All I'm asking is that maybe we take a more serious look and maybe get a few more facts before we just say, you don't want to pass it on.
Fine.
When I asked, you say that amount of money, but you don't know how many actual veterans it affects.
Correct, but I also don't know that I don't want to have this argument right now, but I don't know that $44 is a legitimate number either,
Well,
because
I'm
again,
just-
that could be a New York State number, which is significantly different than a Westchester number. I don't, not having the specific
Well,
information.
this is my point, is can we get a few more facts before we just say we're not going to do
We
it?
can talk about it.
Okay, that's great. That's all I'm asking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What do we get then?
If we take into account, for example, last year that we said that the average household pays about $7,000, and we're talking only average.
That's really average.
That's really average.
It's not mine.
I would love it if I
That's what I'm saying.
$1,000.
We were talking about
$70.
$70. That's what I'm saying.
Like
I'm
20.
average. That's the average.
So what would 21,000 be?
Huh?
210.
So, but again, unfortunately for us, unless someone goes and knocks on the door and say, "Are you a veteran?" we won't know the number of veterans.
But can't we find that out to the town? Like people get
No.
Star. How do they know my husband's
That's what I'm
veteran?
saying. That's what I'm saying. The only way is, the only thing they can do is tell you if in this household there's a veteran, because they have the veteran exemption for the town. That's what.
Well, then perhaps what we can do is ask the town to give us a listing of who they provide veterans exemptions, if they, or the county.
How many?
No, just exactly how many, and we can just
It has
go
to
from
be
there.
census.
But at least get a little bit more specific.
We're trying to
Sure.
cross-check
So-
whether there's seniors.
Thank you.
I'll talk to the town and see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if Carol just brought up a point too, and see if we can cross-check how many of them are actually seniors. Can we do that? Because then they would be getting a senior exemption.
Well, I don't know if
right?
they give it,
Yeah,
if they
seniors.
give, there may be some, like a listing of who, how many, I don't know.
I'll try.
If you
I'll
could
ask.
just,
I'll ask.
the town clerk should be able to at least,
Mhm.
if, it doesn't hurt to ask. So-
Actually, Paul made a point. There's a different definition of veteran. There's different. What was
Well,
Doesn't there have to be something specific for this particular exemption?
no, there's 4 different
There's
exemptions from
levels.
this one. Combat veteran, I don't remember.
There's one, if you,
I
I think
just
there's
remember
combat,
there's
it's
4.
like, there's certain
Oh, yeah?
levels, and it's increases based,
Based
based on your
Combat
results.
veterans, disabled
Yes.
veterans. Disabled veterans get more than a combat veteran.
and somebody who's
I've been with,
lost
it
somebody.
took me 3 years to get to town just to get my regular taxes. So they're not that much help with
Well,
working with the
between the town and
veterans.
the county, perhaps we can get something together.
That's all I'm asking, is just
Sure.
get a few more numbers. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the end of the evening for most of us. We are actually going to go into exec briefly. But if I can get a motion to close.
Indeed.
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. We are having a meet and greet this Saturday at Dunkin' Donuts from 8:30 to 10 o'clock. And the Wizards are coming this weekend, the Harlem Wizards, so please, if you're looking for something to do with your kids. And our next board meeting will be at the Free Library at 2 weeks from tonight. And the fashion show on Friday.
And facilities meeting that same day, so don't forget.
March 25th.
I know, I was here.